Hear all the latest news and have your say. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand on CJAD 800.
All right, 5:07, and our next guest, Dimitri Soudas, is a former director of communications with the Stephen Harper government and a political commentator. And our feature is brought to you by the folks at Guaranteed Industries, who remind you, for heating, for cooling. By the way, that's residential, industrial, and commercial. They're the folks to call. They've been in business for more than 75 years. That's Guaranteed Industries. Online, guaranteedindustries.com or 514-342-3400. They are a Lennox premier dealer. Dimitri, welcome back. Boy, there's lots to talk about today. I'm not sure where to start, but I notice, and I've not heard anything about this, you say it appears Jagmeet Singh is going to oppose the Trudeau version of carbon pricing. What's this all about?
Well, I guess Mr. Singh is catching everybody off guard once again. I almost feel that he's trying to join the Conservative caucus at this point. So he has now signaled that he no longer supports the Liberal version of carbon pricing. So let's define very clearly what the Liberal version is. It's two carbon pricing regimes, one for individual consumers and another for heavy industry called the industrial carbon price. So what Mr. Singh is now signaling is basically he will remove a carbon tax from consumers. He will tack it onto corporations, big polluters, basically industries. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to pass the cost of his additional carbon pricing
on to
back
everybody
to
else.
consumers.
Sure.
And again, where it makes no sense is the whole purpose for those who believe that the carbon tax is the solution to climate change. The whole purpose of the carbon tax is for it to be punitive, for it to hurt in your pocket. And you then say, well, I will stop doing X, Y, Z because it costs too much. And therefore, somehow, somewhere, greenhouse gas emissions will start declining. I'm just not sure anymore if Jagmeet Singh knows what the NDP stands for. At least when Thomas Mulcair was leader of the NDP, or when Jack Layton was leader of the NDP, they stood on NDP principles. So it's another play by Jagmeet Singh to distance himself. He thinks he's distancing himself, from Justin Trudeau, but he's actually distancing himself from traditional NDP policy.
It seems to me, I'm sorry, like he's playing both sides against the middle here, right? He's looking at the Poilievre plan on cutting the carbon tax, the axe to tax, doesn't like what the Liberals are doing, doesn't like what the Conservatives are doing, and this plan that you just talked about, is this mirrored on someplace else? Does someplace else do the same kind of thing that you know of?
Not that I've heard of. It's almost like Mr. Singh is saying, let's be half pregnant, and we all know that's not an option.
Okay. This all strikes me as very, very... Do you find this, I'm going to use that word, do you find this kind of weird in the last couple of days, in the last week or so, all these things that Jagmeet Singh has been doing? Including, by the way, commenting on the situation here in Amar LaSalle Verdun and that pamphlet that Craig Sauvé had, the one in front of the Palestinian flag, and he's apparently okay with that too.
At some point, they say desperate
times,
moment,
yeah.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. It just seems that he is desperate. And let me be crystal clear on this pamphlet by Mr. Sauvé. It's not just the cover page of the pamphlet. It's not just the picture of another country's flag on an official campaign pamphlet. You actually need to flip and read the inside part. It is clearly pandering not only to pro-Palestinian voters, but to anti-Israel, anti-Jewish voters. Why do I say that? Just a couple of weeks ago, 6 hostages were executed in cold blood by the terrorist organization called Hamas. Why is that not in the pamphlet? I think that this upcoming by-election is critical for both Mr. Singh and Mr. Trudeau. What I will tell you today, Aaron, is it looks like the Bloc is going to win this riding.
Yeah, it seems that way.
We will see on Monday, but what this is going to signal is, and especially if Mr. Singh finishes behind the Liberals. So let's forget for a second about who's going to win it. But if Mr. Singh finishes in third place in LaSalle-Émar Verdun, if he loses Elmwood Transcona, which is the Manitoba by-election, just a week ago, he said, I am the only leader that can take down both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. So if he finishes third behind Justin Trudeau, who is already historically unpopular, and loses a traditional NDP seat that has always been won by the NDP, minus one exception in 2011 when Stephen Harper won a majority government, what happens to what he said last week?
Fair point. Not that far away, a few days away from that happening. Let me move on to talk about what happened here today. Surprise, another person jumping ship at the CAQ. Maybe not someone everyone is familiar with, Yuri Chassin, but you know what? His points are probably, I think, mirrored by other people within that party as well. This is a government with an $11 billion deficit, and there's no way around the fact that it's the biggest we've ever had in the province. And according to this gentleman who was with the Montreal Economic Institute, he's had enough.
So 9 times out of 10, Aaron, when a caucus member, especially a government caucus member, quits caucus, sits as an independent for whatever ABCD reason, what you immediately see is his former caucus colleagues and his party become extremely critical of him. What we saw today is both the premier, ministers, and other caucus members sing his praises. They were not critical of him because the reality is the following. The CAQ, which the C stands for coalition, is a coalition between provincial Liberals, provincial Parti Québécois, or former Parti Québécois, and the ADQ. $11 billion deficit on one hand. The most important element, which I think is what we're seeing in this entire story, is that several of his caucus members, because what we read today in the Journal de Montréal, he delivered literally the same speech to caucus last week, and people got up and applauded, which basically signals if la CAQ does not go back to the basics on why they got elected. Why did they get elected? Because they said we would end the polarization that Quebecers have been in over the last 40 years between federalists and separatists. We will run good public finances. We will fix healthcare. We will fix education. If they actually don't move in that direction and the results are visible, palpable, results that people can actually say, my healthcare system is better today than what it was 4 years ago, same for education, especially for the finances. And you know, I heard a friend of mine yesterday was mentioning that recently when you saw back in December 2023, those negotiations with the unions, with the teachers, with the nurses, the government again threw money at the problem. At the time, the current finance minister, Mr. Girard, actually says, if this continues any further, I will have to consider resigning. So big challenge for la CAQ, how to balance the budget, fix healthcare, and fix education. It's a tall order, but that's what they will be judged on in the 2026 election campaign.
You know, to your point, that's fascinating, this idea that usually when you walk away, you know, you get shunned. And in fact, in this case, as you just said, Dimitri, they're not doing that. It's exactly the opposite. They're basically looking at him saying he's a man of principle and he's walking away for a good reason.
And where now you may agree or disagree with his policy positions. For example, one item that's really important to him is for more transparency out of unions, to know how much union leaders make and so on. But what he said today shows a high level of principle. He said two things. Number one, I'm not crossing the floor to any other party, and I will finish my mandate. And he completely excluded joining the Conservative Party of Quebec, which shows that he is a man of principle. But sometimes, more often than not, men of principle means that if he decides to run as an independent again in the next provincial election campaign, the likelihood of getting reelected is slim to none.
Wow, so that's interesting. You're kind of making it seem like obviously he would know that, and therefore what? He's looking for an exit out of politics altogether?
Well, I think he came into politics with his principles, his values, his beliefs, and what he has clearly become is disenchanted, being in a government that isn't necessarily, according to him again, going in the direction that he thought they were going in 2018 when they won their first mandate.
Right.
So it's an exit from politics, because to win as an independent, as you know, probably better than me, is a very tall order.
Interesting story. I wonder now. So, if you lost the CAQ has lost Pierre Fitzgibbon, they've lost now Yuri Chassin, they lost the whip not that long ago. Once what does they say? Once the rats start to hop off the ship, is this the beginning? Do you think? I don't say the end because there's not a provincial election for 2 more years. But is this something that might worry the premier or not? Because it doesn't seem like it is.
Well, the biggest question here, Aaron, is the premier himself going to run in 2026? And I'll bet you a nickel. Since our government banned pennies, I'll bet you a nickel that people like Christian Dubé are not going to run in the next provincial election. So the CAQ, on one hand, has its current struggles and serious struggles in public opinion polls. Will the current leader, who is the premier, be the leader and the candidate for premier in the next election? The big question mark, the big joker in all of this is who will lead the provincial Liberals in the next election. Because if on one hand you have a charismatic PQ leader, which they do, they have a charismatic leader that is getting attention and is first in the polls. If the provincial Liberals manage to also get a charismatic leader, well, number one, we're back to the good old days of polarization. If you're a Federalist, you vote Liberal. Yeah. If you're not a Federalist and you're a Sovereignist, you vote PQ. And then we go backwards again.
Ah, yes. Isn't that exciting? All right, Dimitri, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
You too, Dimitri Soudas, joining us today.